Whether you're about to enter the industry, want to start your own label, or you're just curious, this video explains step by step how collections are made, sold, and produced. Hi, welcome to Pattern Making with Leigh. This video is a bit longer than my other Introduction to Pattern Making course videos because it explains the whole process, how to take an idea from inside your head to your customer. And I'll also explain the sales process and what documents you need and how to work out your retail and wholesale prices. So lots of information there, so let's get started.
I've broken the process down into 5 stages: design, sampling, sales, pre-production, and production. Now, let's get into the details.
The first stage is a design process where the head designer and the team of assistants will come up with the ideas for the collection. And in bigger companies like McQueen, they had separate divisions for knitwear and denim and leather, so you get quite a lot of teams within a big company.
The end product of the design process is a series of sketches.
These could be hand sketches or trade sketches. Sometimes designers also like to drape their ideas or provide reference images, but they found some way to communicate their ideas. While the design process is very creative, a good designer will work within restraints too and listen to the other teams. And I'll be doing another video on how to actually create collections that sell, so click on the notifications bell so you don't miss it.
The designer also has to select the fabrics which will be used to create the designs, and the fabric team is busy sourcing them and ordering a small quantity of sampling fabric to use to create the sample collection.
If you want specific colours, it's best to send the Pantone number and order a test swatch before you place your order. And also the embroidery and print process starts now too, because the fabric mill need to dye, test and develop the print and embroidery and send a test swatch. It all takes a while.
Once the fabrics and sketches are done, the sampling process can begin.
The goal of the sampling process is to create a prototype of the designer's idea, but this takes a while. Let's walk through each stage of the sampling process. The first step is to give the designer's idea to a pattern maker, and they'll create a 2D paper pattern of the designer's idea, which will then be cut in fabric and given to machinists to sew the prototype sample. This is also called a first toile or distil toile. I've only worked for high-end designers, and high-end designers, nobody calls it a prototype sample, they just call it a toile. Anyway, the idea with the prototype sample is to actually test the designer's idea. This is the first time they're going to see it in 3D. It should still fit, obviously, but just to see whether they actually like it, whether the design, proportions, and idea actually works. Also, it'll be made in sampling fabric, so usually calico or muslin or some leftover dead stock from previous collection. It's just to test the idea, really. Usually, the design team will then meet to discuss it. This could be in a fit meeting with a fit model or just on a mannequin in the studio. And sometimes it'll get binned, other times it'll get morphed into a new idea, and hopefully most of the time it will get the green light and then go through to the next stage of sampling process. But even if it gets the green light, there'll still be some pattern making changes you need to make. So the pattern maker will make them, then give the new pattern, which will be cut in a fabric that is a similar composition to the final fabric, not your final fabric, but very similar composition to create the next sample. Sampling fabric is expensive and you have a limited quantity of it, but it's important to use a fabric that has a similar composition to, or the same composition as the final fabric you're going to use for this design, because as the name suggests, this is checking the fit of the sample. There shouldn't be any design changes at this stage. Oh, and side note for all the pattern makers and design assistants out there, you never want to be seeing a sample for the first time with the designer. You should be checking it beforehand. Check the pattern matches the design, check machines sewn it correctly. There's nothing quite like the wrath of a designer who is seeing a sample and realizing it's not quite what they envisioned and hasn't actually articulated their idea, especially after a long day of fittings. It's a really bad place to be in. Always check your samples before the designer sees them. And once the fit sample has been fitted and any pattern adjustments have been made, the pattern will then be cut in the final fabric to create the final sample. There is one exception. If the design has placement embroidery or a placement print, the pattern will need to be digitized first.
Then, the print or embroidery team will customize the print or embroidery to suit the pattern. See these little mini test addresses? These were all over the McQueen studio and allowed the team to test their ideas at a smaller scale before placing the order.
You only need to do this if it's a placement print. If it's a repeat all over print, you can just order the fabric without the pattern. So that's an overview of the sampling process, and while the process is the same, where it happens and by whom really depends on your company's structure. And I'll be doing another video coming soon about comparing 2 different company structures and discussing the pros and cons of each one so you can find the best structure for your company.
And once all samples are made, you're ready to sell your sample collection, and the first step is to present it.
Before you approach buyers, you need to get them excited about your collection. This is usually done with a lookbook, which is a fun photo shoot of some of your key looks from the collection. Or if you've got the cash, you can do a massive runway show on the fashion weeks and get lots of famous people to come along.
Then, you need to create line sheets.
Line sheets are really important for sales.
They have a trade sketch with front and back view, name of the style, a unique style number for each colour, the fabric composition, the colour, your recommended retail price, and your wholesale price, which is how much you're going to charge them.
But how do you work out retail and wholesale pricing markups? I've only worked for high-end designers, so I'll be sharing those sort of standard markups. But just so you know, wholesaling companies and drop shipping are completely different business models with different markups.
First, you need to know your manufacturing and materials cost.
The manufacturing cost is how much it will cost to actually make it. And the sample machinist who sewed the final sample should tell you how long it took them to sew it. And obviously when things are made en masse, it'll be much quicker, but it'll give your production team a ballpark figure to work with. Materials is everything you need to make it, and the pattern maker will do a rating on the pattern. So they'll measure how much fabric they'll need, how many trims, like buttons and binding, and yes, if you work at binding, you need to measure the length of every single seam on the pattern that has binding. You'll also need to include things like shipping labels, care labels, hang tags. Your development team will usually have a standard price for all these add-ons.
Once you know those, times it by 1.1, so add 10% to cover your development and sampling costs. And this is your production cost for each piece. To get your wholesale price, times it by 2.
You might decide you want a bigger markup. Some people do 2.5, it's up to you.
Then, times this number by 2.5 to get your retail price.
Once again, you might want to do a smaller retail markup. I wouldn't go under 2 though. If your piece does end up going on sale, say 50% off, then the retailer makes no money if your markup is 2. So they like something over 2.
Let's see an example. Say the shirt costs $100 to make. Times it by 1.1 to add your 10% sampling cost is $110. Times it by 2 to get your wholesale price. This is a 100% markup for you. Then times 220 by 2.5 to get your recommended retail price. Now I can complete my line sheet.
You'll also need to supply them with an order sheet and an order end date. You don't want to close your books too early and miss out on sales, but then again, if you leave it too late, you'll run out of time to produce your collection. And retailers have their own delivery dates too, which you need to meet.
And once you have all that, you can start sales and approach buyers.
Most high-end designers will have their own showroom or a shared showroom where they'll invite store buyers to make appointments to view their collection. And there'll usually be a fit model there to try the collection on too. But you could do pre-sales on your own website, approach your best customers, or do a trunk show. By the end of the sales period, you'll have your orders and you're ready to start pre-production. Once you have your orders, you'll know which styles have been sold and which ones have been dropped. And you may need to drop some styles because you haven't reached the minimums needed to make it profitable for you to make. Then the pattern maker will make any final adjustments to the patterns and then they'll be graded. From memory, I think there's a grading setup cost and then there's a fee for each size that you get. So obviously only get the sizes that you need, but it's more and more common for factories to actually do the grading for you and production. So you just send them the sample pattern and they'll do everything on their end. These are called cut and sew factories. And if you want to check the grading that they've done, you need to order a sampling size set, but that will cost you.
The production team is also using the fabric and trim ratings provided by the pattern maker to order all the materials and create the tech packs for the factories, so everything is ready for the bulk production to be done.
The production team is also scheduling in time with the factories. You need to actually book your window to have your things made, and the factory can't do it, they'll be trying to find alternative factories, which is why it's another really good idea to have a couple of manufacturers that you like to work with.
You'll also want the factory you're working with to create a pre-production sample, also known as a PP sample.
The sample has to be perfect. The finishes, construction, even the label placement, because this is the reference they're going to use to create the production run. And when it's approved, you can start production. Before the factory begins, you need to put down a deposit. This deposit could be anywhere between 20 to 100%. This depends on your relationship with them and your past history. And you also need to supply all your materials and patterns. They will not start until everything is there. This is really important because otherwise it will delay your order, which means you might not meet the sales deadlines for your store, or worse, you'll lose your spot.
While production is happening, you'll also want the factory to send you a top of production sample.
This garment should be randomly selected from the early stage of the production run, and the idea is you get it and check and match the PP exactly. If not, hopefully you've got some time to adjust the production run.
Then, the production run needs to be packed and shipped.
They can ship directly to you or to the store or to a warehouse, it's up to you. But if you are a high-end designer and the store you're delivering to is very particular, which they can be, it can be a good idea to get the delivery sent directly to your studio and then you do a final QA to make sure everything is perfect. And that's an overview of how to make, sell and produce collections. And this topic is huge and I'll be doing more videos on it, specific parts of it, and share my experiences working in the industry with high-end designers. I'd love to hear your experiences too, so please leave a comment if you'd like to share. Speaking of sharing, my mission with this YouTube channel is to make pattern making skills accessible, and a big part of that is making them affordable or free. I get it, fashion is expensive, it's expensive to study, you have to intern for ages for free, and it takes a long time to make money in it. It's also a very expensive hobby. But if you are enjoying these videos and you can afford to support me, I would really appreciate it so I continue creating free content for you. You can become a member of my channel or give a one-off super thanks payment by clicking on the love heart with the $sign below. Now onto the final video of Module 1 of my Introduction to Pattern Making course, how to draw patterns at an industry level. And industry sewing patterns are very different from commercial sewing patterns. There are different terms, abbreviations and symbols that you need to be familiar with in order to read, understand and to create your own patterns. For my tailored to you and can't get enough members, I have created a director's cut version of this video with more advanced industry tips, so click on that video pop up.